Well, yes, we are looking now at a number of issues which you have seen there and try to relate them to other matters. It's a potpourri, so to speak, of the issues we're looking at this morning. We're now being joined, as Chairman indeed teased earlier, by Professor Rufai Ahmed Alkali, who used to be a former special advisor to President Goodluck Jonathan, and he is a member of the National Working Committee of the Social Democratic Party. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much, Mangwe. Thank you.
Well, you have seen there, and I'm sure you are currently observing. I mean, the dailies tell us on a daily basis just where we are as a country. Very few stories of when you look at what is happening, today, makes one glad as a Nigerian. Most of the stories, one can say that is the nature of news. But I believe that if the situations that made us happier were more, the news will be constrained to carry some of those situations. One of them, which we just highlighted there, is the return of migrants from Libya. And you see this, the situation of those who had returned before now, those who had been promised. It seems miles away from what government officials are saying. From your perspective, I mean, one who has been in government and one who is also a practitioner, I mean, who has studied political science up to a professorial level, do you think that there is a disconnect between what we say we practice as a country, that is our democratic dispensation, our presidential democratic system, and what is supposed to deliver to the Nigerian people?
Well, thank you very much. First, I want to start from the general. I have often said, and I believe so very strongly in my heart, that you cannot understand Nigeria and its politics and development without looking at some of the variables that inform the evolution of this country and the way we pattern our development. I've often said that to understand our country, whether we like it or not, the variables are, first, they are historical, and some of them are contemporary. Some of them are external. Some of them are internal. Some of them are structural, that is institutional, and some are human elements. Some are individual, some are collective. It is when you look at the totality of these variables that will arrive at where we are. In other words, we must understand that Nigeria is a country in transition. And it's not Nigeria alone. Most African countries, maybe some Asian countries, maybe some Latin American countries. And as a country in transition, it means that it is undergoing not only political transition, but economic transition, social transition, cultural transition.
But what are we transitioning into? I mean, where are we transitioning to? Because I think that's a major question for a number of people. The fact that when we started out in 1960 as a country, a number of people had great hopes for this country. If you ask those who were around in 1960 and are still around today, they will tell you that they think we have missed the map somewhere, and that where we're transitioning to right now is not the path that we ought to be on. What do you say to that?
Yes, that's right. In fact, you're absolutely right, because while we were teaching undergraduate courses, we used to be very critical of our early nationalists. We tend to call them, they are conservatives, sometimes even use harsh word like reactionary. But with the benefit of hindsight, you look at those people who are the leading lights in the formation of the Nigerian today. The Zik, the Awolo, Sardauna, and most of them, Tafawa Balewa, all of them. You look at them with the benefit of hindsight, they had a long-term vision about this country. They had a long-term vision. And most of them, that's why their legacies still remain very much with us. Now, so what we are saying is that if, for example, we have not been transiting, we have been consistent with our pattern of development, both politically, economic, and other things, there would have been no problem. But it's not been going that way. It's that, frankly speaking, Nigerians are anxious to move. Nigerians are, feel that we are being left behind in the Committee of Nations. Nigerians are not comparing themselves with the one behind us. We are always comparing ourselves with those ahead of us.
And that's what we ought to be
doing. And this should be the case.
Yes.
So in this race for development, in this race to catch up, in this race to make a difference, in this race to stand among the Committee of Nations, there is always some sort of disconnect between what we think we should do and what we actually do.
Can I ask you, first and foremost, you agree with people who say we have missed the path? Do you?
Well, I don't know whether we have missed it or we have not missed it. But again, I take you back to what I said, the very variables. Because, you know, the movement of society and even human being alive is not a straight path. It's never a straight path. So whatever you set out to do does not mean necessarily you achieve that objective, given other intervening variables that also you have to cross and meet. Like you said, for example, at the beginning of the 1960s, we had a parliamentary system. And we ran it first before the Republican the Constitution, and then after the Republican Constitution, before 1966, when everything scattered. There are people up to now today who feel that the parliamentary system is better. But again, the way I feel, it is very difficult to have a parliamentary system. There are people who believe in it very strongly, and I don't blame them. Parliamentary system in a multicultural society, very complex society like Nigeria, it is very difficult. And the main reason is that to share power between a president, that is the head of state, and the head of government, a prime minister, in a Republican constitution is difficult. Not like, for example, when you are having an arrangement where the Queen of England is the head of state and she is non-partisan, she is non-active, and then you have an active prime minister who runs the government. So sharing power in an African society is always very, very difficult. But if it's done very well, fine, it will succeed. So it is very, so the transition now, even after running presidential system, both in 1979 to 1983, and subsequently up to now, about 20 years, still people are questioning the presidential system. So it means that we must agree on what we really want as a country first. And I think the debate continues. Some call for constitutional review, some call for national sovereign national conference, some call for all kind of questions. I think it's
where do you stand? I mean, as one who has advised the president politically, where do you stand in all of this?
I think I stand with the people because it is not me that matters. It's what Nigerians want that matters. Not what me, it's not a personal matter. And Nigerians want the best for themselves. And I think we should want the need for the best for ourselves. And sometimes, you know, let's look at it now. We have about 20 years of running this constitution. Okay? We have run about now 6 general elections since then. It's never happened. Many people never had faith that we could run a democracy for 20 years. With all the contradictions, all the difficulties, all the challenges, all the obstacles. But we have had 20 years. Now last time I was in this station, I did mention that it is now better for us not to look back where we were before. And then now project what is the next journey for the next 20 years for Nigeria. And what I mentioned in that program is that if we want to make progress, we now have to begin to move from the debate on the voting rights, which are essential, which are integral, which are inalienable, now to begin to look at social rights, how to empower individuals, how to make life better for the majority of Nigerians.
Now, you say that you stand with the people.
Yes.
That this is not about you. But if you had to advise, and I'm sure that you were in that position to do so, part of what the Jonathan administration came up with was this 2014 national conference, based on agitations of a lot of Nigerians then. However, you know, there are people who say there is nothing wrong with our constitution, even though, yes, you say that. Some people say it is constitutional review and what have you. Some people say it is those who implement the constitution that have the problem. You must take a stand somewhere from someone who has seen things, not just from the books, but also in practice. You have been in government, I mean, not just in government, in politics for a very long time. What is your stand on that?
You see, first and foremost, I want us to understand that no constitution is perfect. And every constitution is a living document. It's not a finished document. Even the principle of democracy, there's a woman called Anki Hochveld. She defined development as a goal, a process, an interaction, series of interactions. And I will use that also to say democracy is also the same way. It is a goal. And I tell you that it's very difficult to say there's a country today in this world that will say we have reached that goal. So it means also a process. It means that people aspire to move toward that goal. And there also is a series of interactions between the various elements, the human element, the institutional element, everything has to be together. Now, when people sat down and drafted the 1999 Constitution, they could not anticipate everything. But most of them had genuine interest. So, over the period of 20 years, the various constitutional amendments have also going through so many reviews. One maybe through new enactments, for example, from the National Assembly, to sharpen the meaning and essence of some of the provisions of the Constitution. And then, of course, the court rulings on various aspects. And of course, you remember that in 2010, one of the things that troubled Nigeria at that time mostly, before 2010, was the issue of the Electoral Act. The issue that elections were being held, but after the results were announced, people begin to question the credibility, the authenticity, the legitimacy of the outcome of the results. And the government of that time, from Yaradua, subsequently Jonathan, insisted that with the working together with the National Assembly, that we must address the issue of the Electoral Act. People have forgotten how much effort was made by the government, including the National Assembly, to review the Electoral Act. And it's a major achievement, okay? Which has changed so many things, because until then, the INEC was not, it was independent in name, but it was also to draw its money just like other ministries and organizations. But now it is on its own. Until then, INEC, you have so many politicians inside the INEC Commission. Now you don't have active politicians. They must be there hidden. But they can't be there openly, carrying members as commissioners of INEC boards at the national, at the zonal levels. So even that one now, over the past few years now, the 2015 election and 2019 elections has begun to bring results that we are now putting our act right. You know? What am I saying? That whatever the Constitution provided, it is up to us in the process of implementing certain policies and decisions and programs, we begin to sharpen the direction of the Constitution.
So do you think that this Constitution is giving us progress? Is it leading us in the path that we ought to go?
No. Well, if, for example, for somebody who believes that you need a parliamentary system, for example, he will not be happy whatever happens under this presidential system.
No, but that's not true. I mean, no. that might not be necessarily true in the sense that, I mean, what a country, first of all, seeks, and the purpose of government is security of lives and property. In the very first report we played there, where the Senate sometime last year held a security conference, which involved not just them, but also members of the executive. They invited all the defense, all the security chiefs in the country. You know, they were very concerned about the security in the country. This is more than a year after they held that conference, and the security situation is still giving us cause for concern in the country. If a constitution is delivering on its promise to secure, or, you know, the people who operate the constitution are delivering on their promise to secure lives and property, and we're seeing it in our GDP, we're seeing it in unemployment figures, do you think that there will be so much discontent as to whether or not we practice a presidential system or a parliamentary system? Isn't it because things seem to be failing, that's why people are clamoring more and saying there might be a problem with the Constitution?
No, you're right. You are right. Absolutely, you're right. And I think that goes back to the point again I mentioned that you cannot take away the issue of the political element outside the economic element, or take the economic element outside the social element. Let's look at it this way, sister. If you look at how Nigeria has passed over, let's say, the past 40 years, we have moved steadily. And as a nation, you will find that there are, like the external elements, for example, we have consistently, as we move in our own direction, you find, like the IMF and the World Bank, okay? For example, we'll come and say, why not we do it this way? Sometimes openly, sometimes subliminally. Over the past 40 years, you find that gradually, the neoclassical economics, that is their paradigm, has become the dominant framework for economic management, not only in Nigeria, but most of the developing countries, especially in Africa. I'm coming back to this issue of security, issue of unemployment, because they are connected. You may recall that earlier in 1970s, government took decisive decision that government must be in control of the commanding heights of the economy. That's the word they use. And on two phases, they encourage indigenous elements and government to be involved in the management of the economy, largely because at that time, Nigeria did not have very strong, powerful businessmen who could be in charge of various businesses as it were. So government had to play not a hidden role, but a visible role. But by end of 1970s, the whole thing changed. And it did not start from Africa, it did not start from Nigeria, it started from Europe. And the argument, that is what you call the neoclassical school, is that government had no business in doing business. And there are still many people who believe this. I do not believe in that. I believe government had a role to play. Because those people who are saying that government had no business in doing business, at the time they were saying that already government had done a lot in helping to protect and support big businesses. So by the time you move away, you roll away the frontier of the state from the economy, other big businesses could take over conveniently, whether internal businesses or transnational corporations. What am I saying? Over the past 40 years, what has been happening is that gradually, systematically, we continue adapting policies that in one form or another create unemployment.
And you think that's because government has hands off business?
Well,
or is hands
no.
business?
In some respect, of course, there are so many places, there are sectors, like, for example, the communication sector. Mm-hmm. When government, we know that when government was directly involved, that it reached a point it was virtually comatose or getting dead. So now we say that with
liberalized.
Good, that's the word. When the economy, if you want to do it, if you don't want the government to be involved, the best way is liberalization. If you do liberalization, okay, fine, it's still part of the macroeconomic, the neoclassical paradigm. But still, you are creating a condition for competitiveness among providers of whatever side, whether they are banks, insurance, airlines, newspapers, whatever, media, any kind of media organization. Where we have certain issues is where you begin to talk about privatization, where you take big business owned by government, okay, and then you sell the property out to a big business person. Historically, you find that no businessman can take a giant company owned by government overnight and then retain the same employees under the same condition of service. So if you look at that one alone first, I'll just mention one. And then the fact that also the countries that we now look at who are moving very fast, somehow they are also protective of their domestic industries. For example, there's no reason why in this country we cannot produce enough cotton for our textiles. I've not done a lot of study on the textile industry, but from what I've read over the past few years, we have a vibrant, industry there if you are to revive it. That alone can also provide jobs.
So
two other elements.
Why are there no incentives then? Or why is it that governments are not seeing the opportunities, to provide jobs for their people, security for their people through this means that you have mentioned?
That's right.
Why is it not lucrative for them? Is that a problem with the Constitution?
Well,
or you think that's a problem with politicians?
No,
is that a problem with the state?
That's why I want to look at, let's say,
where does the problem lie?
Although I'm not trying to go deep, far enough, I'm trying to contextualize it. That if you look at the variables, okay, selling off and then coming up with policies, because, like I said, no matter how much you want to be a friend of the Western European countries, okay, as we have seen today what is happening in United States and Britain, especially United States, the whole president of the United States will say America first. Despite the fact that he has all the strong economy, he has all the network, he has business, but now he's talking about everything is about protecting jobs in the United States, and he does not care quarreling with anybody as far as it affects the economy of the United States. If you go back to all the debate about Brexit in Britain also, I think they came to a point, although they liked the EU, but they wanted to protect certain values, that thing, but at least the economic interest also was central to it, even if it's not very clearly. So what are we saying? We are saying that if advanced countries in this world are also protective of their industry, protective of their job market, protective of their workers, protective of their labor, the more reason why we should be thinking along those lines. That whenever we sign a treaty, whenever we sign an agreement, whenever we go and negotiate, what is it for us? What is for Nigeria? Now, the second part.
So we should adopt to Nigeria first?
Well, I think so. We'll reach a point to do that because, after all, we are not being the first to do that. If you say Nigeria first, which means now we will look at ourselves and look at, now we celebrate China. China did not come to where they are today just like that.
But do you think it is also the laziness of politicians?
I don't believe that's laziness. I think it is, the story is bigger than that.
The reason I say that is because some people say it's because of oil. That's the reason why we're not wearing our thinking caps, or we're not as forceful as we ought to be.
Well, I think a lot of writers, very prominent writers, have said that Nigeria should have used oil to get out of oil. What does that mean? It means that with the huge investment or huge resources in oil, you could have used it either to invest in agriculture, in other mining sector, in tourism, in commercial activity.
But we haven't done that. Whose fault is it? Shouldn't we blame the politicians?
You see, as we sit here, I think we are not in a court where we take judgment on the affairs of others. We are trying not to pass blame because somebody will say, you too, Alkali, you are also to be blamed.
Is that the reason why you're reluctant to blame politicians?
No. It's just, the issue is much more complex. This is the second time I'm saying that the issue is much more complex. All of us, that's why I said, when you look at the variables of our own issues in this country, I said, there is a individual and collective. That is, as I mentioned, that one. So now also you look at the other elements. One.
Professor, we're almost out of time, and I'd like you to just give your closing comments. If we're to move forward, what would you say our leaders should do? If you can, in 1 minute.
I think it's very important that we have to re-examine ourselves. We have to move away from blame game. Everybody must accept responsibility in one form or the other, but in varying degrees, okay, why we are where we are. I think we are progressing now because in the sense that people are now beginning to take charge. In the recent election, it has shown that it is possible that in the same polling station, polling booth, people can decide to choose this person and then this person under different political parties, which means they want to make people accountable, that they should not take this issue of vote for granted. That if you commit yourself, make a promise, you must fulfill the promise. Well, and that in that case, you must, whatever you do, either in your argument, in your debate, in your decision, you must always remember the people behind you. And this is what we need now.
Prof, I've been told that we have overshot our 1 minute. I have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. It does take a lot to talk about the problems of the country and come up with solutions. But we've been speaking with Professor Ahmed Rufai Alkali, Rufai Ahmed Alkali, who is a member of the National Working Committee of the Social Democratic Party. Sunrise Daily will continue in a moment. Please stay with us.